My name is Joel Rose, a friend of Richard and Jeanette's. Rabbi's family and friends. Visits with Richard, as you've all heard, were always inspiring. He fought his illness with everything he had. He was never sitting around. He was always reading, doing things online, talking to people. He refused to let his illness and his pain win. This was the situation, and this was what he had to do about it. He was cheerful and bright with visitors, nurses, and all of the hospital staff. We would make plans for when he would come home and enjoy the outdoors. He'd always asked about everybody else. How are you doing? Is your family all right? What's happening in your life? Both of us were patients at Princess Margaret, so visits were frequent. Our conversations were always intimate and focused. Meds, drugs, chemo, radiation, comfort, pain choices, next steps, and how soon he would be better. But Jeanette, most of the time, he spoke about you. He worried about the quality of your life and your future. Most of all, he wanted you to realize a full, meaningful life. You know that. To say Kaddish for your husband and my great friend has kept his fine character and his optimism front of mind every day. As Jews, a Yahrzeit marks the end of mourning. We are to go forward, cherishing memory, but recognizing all of God's blessings. Jeanette, our blessings now turn to you. The Jewish people are a family, and we in this room are your family. Now you have much to do, and we are all with you.
I'm Stephen Moss, one of Richard's good friends. I know that today marks a very important time at Yahrzeit, but truthfully I think about Richard every day. Why do I think about Richard every day? Because I need the help. I need the help in making good decisions. Richard always knew how to make a good decision. He always knew the right thing to do. He always knew the caring thing to do. We've talked a lot about tonight about near the end of his life, but I knew him for a long time, and he was always that way. I always remember him helping out, especially his mom and his dad, running out to the hospital with his mom, really being the primary caregiver in the family for his mom throughout all of the troubles that she had. He always knew when to do the right thing. He also knew when to cheat as well, and when to have fun. You weren't the only one bringing him food, by the way. I'm sure if any of you had been to his room, there was quite a large cupboard just to the left of the doorway, which I'm happy that nobody really opened that often. Also, we weren't supposed to tell Jeanette. Forgot about that. He also knew how to have fun as well. He learned how to scuba dive. We went scuba diving, got a certification, done with that, had his fun. We learned how to climb mountains. I remember we went to Algonquin and we climbed mountains, and we went to Gross Morin and climbed mountains as well. But Richard also knew the right thing to say, because he would warn me, really the trouble is going down. How philosophical was that? It really was the hard part of going up a mountain, going down, hard on your body, hard on the mind. Richard also knew, of course, how to cheer someone up. He would always say, so tell me your troubles, I'll tell you mine, but tell me your troubles as well. And somehow, as you've heard tonight, by the end of the moment, you knew that you felt better because he was actually helping you. He also was incensed with things that were important to him too, like his BlackBerry, like the football, and also helped me if I ever feel I need to forget something. Richard always remembered everything, every statistic, everybody's name. I'd be sitting with him and I'd go, I can't remember, and he would go, oh, give me the name immediately. A perfect memory. So Richard is someone that for me helps me every day and will continue to do so. I hope to think about him every day from now on as well.
It is so wonderful, Jeanette, that you've orchestrated this. And what I'd like to do is, in Richard's memory and merit, just share a thought that I think is ever present, which is how do you be happy in an unhappy world? And I'd just like to share with you 3 small thoughts, because I think that if we look around our society and we look in the mirror as ourselves sometimes, you know, we could be happier. And I think we all can agree that Richard had that special ingredient in his sauce that he was happy. And so I'd like to share with you perhaps 3 ideas that I think made Richard an extremely happy person and why he was an inspiration to all of us. So the first idea is a cute idea that I learned firsthand. I learned for many years in a religious institution on Bathurst and Coldstream. And in this institution, there would be around 30 full-time rabbis studying, called Kollel guys, and around 50 or 60 businessmen that would take time out of their day and study in this institution. So it'd be like 80, 90 people. It happens to be that if you have the opportunity, and you're not a full-time rabbi, to study at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. in the morning, you are probably wealthy, because most people can't do that. And so it would be filled with rabbinical students who are in their 20s and 30s, and with businessmen that were courageous enough or were wealthy enough to take out time to study. And therefore, the institution is always a hotbed for poor people collected, what we call mishulachim. So they would always come into the institution 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and always go over to people and, you know, shake a couple of coins in their hand and say, you know, can you give me money? Can you give me money? Give me money? And this would be just incessant. I don't know if you've ever learned in a place where there are, you know, just your kids are constantly bothering you, or they're constantly on top of something's always going on. In this institution, there are constant beggars. I don't know if you've ever gone to any famous places in the Jewish or non-Jewish, and they're just always there. And I remember one specific incident where and a guy from Israel who came collecting, and he says to me, and his English was very limited, and he says, are you rich? So I referred to the famous statement by Ben Zoma in Ethics of Our Fathers, and I said to him, who is rich? Who is happy with his lot? Ezo Ashir Hasamech Bechalko, I told him. So he says, oh, you're poor. But the truth is, let's be honest, is that if you have an individual living on $50,000 a year, and he's spending $40,000, and he's putting money away, that person is living within his means, he's happy with his lot, and they're able to be successful. And then you have people having $300,000 a year, but they're spending $400,000, or worse than that, whatever they have. They're just not happy with what they have, and you're saying, why aren't you happy, right? Poor Bill Gates, only now the second richest man in the world. I'll tell you that I showed my kids a picture of a little child who was eating an ice cream cone. It was a commercial. And this child is eating an ice cream cone, and this child is so happy. And you know how you nurse, I don't know how you take a cone down, whether you chop the bottom and let it all flow into your mouth, or whether you swirl around, but this child is nursing this cone, and this child is so happy. Well, sure enough, another child sits next to this first child, and this child has like a jumbo cone. And suddenly, of course, that first child is no longer happy. Because if you're comparing yourself to the next person, you will never be happy. Impossible to be happy. And I think that's one of the answers to Richard's success, is he never compared his happiness to other people's happiness. He was just happy because I have Jeanette in my life. I have my friends in my life. Even at his end, I'm making my old chat friends. I'm making acquaintances. This is the best week of my life. He told me that the week that he passed away because of all his friends that are coming back to him. He never compared himself to anybody else. Which is crazy because I compare myself to my older brother's success, my younger brother's success, my sister's success. Just now, my younger brother is in LA and my sister is in Puerto Rico. And they both WhatsApped me pictures of them. You know, it's my wife's birthday, and so all my nieces on the beach in Puerto Rico say, "Happy birthday from Puerto Rico!" And then my brother WhatsApped me, "Hey everyone, happy birthday, we're in LA, having a great time." And so right before I came here, I was a little bit disheveled, I don't know if you saw me, I lied out, I have an ice patch around this big on my front lawn, and I took off my shirt, and I lied down on the ice patch like this, and I had my son Shlomo video me, and I said, you know, we're having a great time in balmy Toronto. But really, if you analyze why I did that, is because I wanted to say, you're trying to make me upset because you're having such a good time, my dear brother and sister. Well, I'm going to be more indignant and more incredibly so sophisticated to make you not enjoy your experience. Because I'm here in Cold Toronto. Because that is life. If you don't get it, and you're constantly comparing yourself to your siblings, to your neighbors, you will never be happy. Ezeu Ashir Ben Zoma said it so perfectly. Who is happy if you're happy with your life? Just be happy. But how can I be happy? Well, let's look at Richard. Richard, his whole life, right? His whole life was happy with his lot. Just be freaking happy already. That's all you have to do. Ezeu Ashir Samech Bechelko. Don't compare. Twain said, I think he said, comparison is the is the thief of happiness. Twain said it, and he's right. If you compare yourself to anybody, you will never be happy. And Richard, of course, understood that. Lesson number 2. And I say this many times when I'm marrying people off, and there's the ketubah ceremony, and I know what the ketubah really is. It's a prenup. A ketubah is a prenup. And let's think about it for a second. Prenups are essentially were created maybe 100 years ago to protect women, right? 100 years ago, women maybe were not in the workforce, and God forbid if they got divorced, they could be just thrown under the bus and not being taken care of. And a prenup was to protect the rights of the woman. Now, it's to protect the rights of either the spouse that doesn't maybe have enough. But definitely the prenup was created with the intent in mind to protect women from being, God forbid, abused. Now let's think for a second how women were treated if they were, God forbid, were divorced or became a widow 500 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago. They couldn't fall back on their degrees 500 years ago. They couldn't just go along their merry way 1,000 years ago. And there was nothing done to protect the woman. And the ketubah, which is 3,000 years old, it's a Jewish law. You have to give a woman a ketubah when you marry her. Because Jewish law says a man is obligated to think about his wife even after marriage. He has obligations to her. Wow, what an amazing gift the Jewish people have given humanity. Many ideas, but specifically this concept of the ketubah. What a powerful idea. And I go on to say that I appreciate that Judaism, and I know people don't like hearing that, is basically obligations. It's very hard to sell this to people. Join our club or get more devoted, because Judaism is all about obligations. It doesn't sell, right? We need Angelina Jolie to say, obligations, come and join us. It's a hard sell, obligations. But I want to tell you something. If you look at the Western world, it's all about rights, the Charter of Rights, the Bill of Rights. What's the difference between how Judaism looks at the world and how the West looks at the world? What's the difference between obligations and rights? So I heard a beautiful idea once, and this really separates the difference between the Western way of looking at things and the Jewish way of looking at things. See, obligations is what I owe other people. I am obligated to honor my parents. I am obligated to give 10% of what I make to charity. I am obligated to do this, that. I am obligated to pay my workers on time. Obligations is what I owe other people. That muscle of the other. And what are rights? Rights are what the world owes me. It's my right, right? As my children often say, you created me, now you got to service me. You know? These are my rights. I'm 6 years old. These are my rights. I'm a child. That's the difference between obligations and rights. Thank God our religion is about obligation, because our religion is about the other. It's about working the muscle of other. You know, I read this in Tolushkin's book on the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and I heard it also from other people. Amazing story. A man writes to Lubavitcher Rebbe the following letter, heart-wrenching. He writes, he says, I can't go on. I am a religious Jew, and I just can't figure it out. I pray, and I feel nothing. I do mitzvot, and I feel nothing. I work hard, but it's not enough. I can't get by. I work hard for my children, but they don't appreciate me. And he sends this letter into the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the great Rebbe from Lubavitch. Well, sure enough, the Lubavitcher Rebbe responded to this letter, gave it to his assistant to mail out. And the assistant, of course, because all the letters are saved and put in books, and it's for the world to knowledge, the names are taken out, but when the Lubavitcher responds to a letter, this is of eternal relevance to humanity because it's a letter of the great Rebbe's information and knowledge, and it could not only be for this individual, but it's information for all of us. So it was normal for the Gabbai, the assistant, to take the letter, obviously put the names aside, and to put it in the future book. And there was not one word written in this letter to respond to this aching man. Not one word written to this man, except the Lubavitcher Rebbe had taken out his pen and circled the first word of every sentence in this man's letter. I, and I. And that was his response. You want to know why Richard was so happy? Because Richard was about you. It was about my obligation to you. And it wasn't about I. The secret to happiness, and we all know this, the secret to happiness is to think less of the I and to think more of the other. It's not about my rights, it's about my obligations. It's what I can do for the next person. And that also, I think, how did Richard become Richard? Because he was happy. That was awkward. How does Richard become Richard? Because he was devoted to this concept of being sameach bechelko, of happy with his lot, and he was devoted to this concept of for the other. And I'd just like to share with you one last idea. You know, in this week's Torah reading, the following statement is said in the Torah. Ma ha'avoda hazos lachem. Why do we have to do all of this? And Rashi brings down, and the Haggadah brings this down. Who made this statement? Ma ha'avoda hazos lachem. Why are you doing all of this work? Does anyone know the Haggadah says this verse is referring to a specific type of son? Does anyone know which son it's referring to? Anyone wanted to take a guess? Anyone want to take a guess? And be mortified as you're wrong and I can embarrass you publicly? What? Evil. It's the Russia, the wicked person. This question of why are you doing all of this work? Why are you doing all this work? So the rabbi saying, the Haggadah says, that is the statement of the wicked person. The Haggadah says, why? Where in the text you get the sense that this is a wicked person? Anyone remember the Haggadah? It's only 4 or 5 months away. Because it says, Lechem. Because what does all this work have to do? Right? Why are you doing all this? You and not me. The Haggadah says, that's the attitude of a wicked person. It's you, but it's not me. Says the Jerusalem Talmud, not the famous Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud. There's another hint in that verse. And that's Ma ha'avoda hazos lachem. What's its work? Why are you doing all this work? And the Jerusalem Talmud says, focus on the word work. It's work, it's work, it's work. It's so much work. I'm not interested in the work. And that cheapens life. You want to know how to live not a successful life? You want to know what a wicked person's thinking? It's too much work. What's his name? Malcolm Gladwell. What did he say? How to achieve... how many hours do you need to become perfect in something? 10,000. Well, 10,000 hours Beethoven had to put in to become Beethoven. You want to achieve in this world, you want to be happy in this world, you got to put in the time. But the wicked person says, I'm not interested in putting in the time. That's the Russia. The Russia says, it's difficult, I'm out. Let someone else, it's too difficult for me. What makes a successful person in this world? What makes a happy person? Someone that's willing to roll up their sleeves and say, I'm going to work. And who, more than anyone that we know, worked on being happy, worked on friendships, worked on doing the right thing, than our dear friend, Richard. In closing, we have a litmus test. I imagine when it's our turn to go up to the big Yankee Stadium in the sky, I'm sorry it's not the rich, where do the Bills play now? On One Bills Drive. But the big stadium in the sky, of course. What? Rich Stadium, right. We know the big stadium in the sky is the Yankee Stadium. When it's time for us to go up, there'll be many questions that were going to be asked to us. Were we honest in business? But I think that ultimately, the litmus test is here on earth. You know, when we're given a test in school, sometimes the teacher gives us the questions beforehand. And we're so excited when we get the take-home test. When we get the questions, here are the questions for the test. And as a student, you love that the teacher is giving me the question. That means all I have to do is, know the answer, and then, tomorrow when I take the test, I'm going to score 100. Isn't that the best one? But then when you go home and you read the question that the teacher gives you beforehand, you're like, are you for real? Explain the French Revolution, explain, the universe, right? That's what it is. That's difficult. I'd rather just have a multiple choice. Just don't give me the question beforehand, right? It's difficult when you have the question beforehand. Our question that God is going to give us in heaven, He's giving us now. Are we appreciating the life that God gave us? God gave us a gift. There are 3 men. The king gives 3 plots of land to Mr. A, B, and C. We'll call them Avram, Baruch, and Chaim. And the king says, I'm giving you each an acre of land, and I'm going to come back in a year. And you can then show me what you did. So sure enough, the king comes back in a year, and Avram says, look what I did with your acre of land. I turned it into a beautiful rose garden. Oh, that's delicious. You can join my ministry. You can be the Secretary of Defense, Environment, whatever you want. This is yours. And he goes over to the second man, Baruch, and Baruch says, I turned it into a garbage dump. So the king says, off with your head. That's ridiculous. I give you a piece of land, and you turn it into a garbage dump, off with your head. And Chaim is a little bit nervous, but he's cautious. He says, what did you do with this plot of land, Chaim? He said, I did nothing. I didn't turn it into a rose garden, but at least I didn't turn it into a garbage dump. And the king says, Chaim, off with your head. And Chaim says, well, I'm as bad as Baruch. And the king says, yes, you're the same as Baruch. I give you something, do something with it. Don't waste the opportunity. I gave you a piece of land, you do something with it. Don't throw my gift in the garbage. We're all given a gift. It's called life. And our job is to turn our lives into the rose garden with exact soil and seeds that God gave us. And one thing for sure, the inspiration of Richard, who was able to turn his acre of life, his years on earth, into a beautiful rose garden. Richard was happy, and that was the soil that produced this beautiful Gan Eden. That was his soil. His soil was happiness. May Hashem bless all of us, that we should be happy with our lot, that we should be able to work hard, and we should focus on the other and not ourselves. And in doing so, we can be upstanding Jews, upstanding people, and really, really give Richard lots of nachas in heaven. Thank you so much.
Amen.
You can clap. Okay, everyone, Jeanette invites everyone to come make a bracha, and in honor of Richard, everyone hang out and schmooze with each other. Richard would love that. Thank you so much for coming. And Jeanette, we'll do Ave Marav in 10 minutes. A big thank you to you for organizing this. It should be a big merit for Richard's neshama. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Marav in 10 minutes in the library. Thank you.